how do you create a great attitude? Like, how do you generate that? Hey, welcome to the Tom Ferry Show. Today, I want to ask you a question. Has there ever been a day this year where you just didn't feel like doing your job? You didn't feel like making phone calls? You didn't feel like following through? You just felt like hiding from the world? Well, my mentors and I would say that meant that your view of the world was quite possibly pretty negative. Some people would call that your attitude. You know, when I was a kid, I was sent to a seminar. I don't know if anybody's ever sent you to a seminar before. I think it was like, hey kid, you need to go to this seminar. And at that event, I saw Brian Tracy and a guy named Zig Ziglar. And I remember being 19 years old and watching these two unbelievable gentlemen, great presenters. But when you're 19 and the year before you had a mohawk and you were kicked out of a bunch of high schools, I wasn't exactly looking for inspiration. Matter of fact, it seemed like everywhere I looked, I saw more negative stuff. And of course, we all know what happens when you do that. But sitting in the front row watching these events, Brian Tracy very mechanically telling me the psychology of selling, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And then Zig Ziglar gets up and he does this beautiful speech. You know, you got to have goals for yourself, and y'all need to check up from the neck up. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a bunch of garbage. Now, I was 19. I'm just being straight with you. Like, I wasn't into motivation. I wasn't into positivity. Like, I barely got out of high school. I was kicked out of both parents' homes. But you know what? I was going into sales, and I knew I needed to do something different. That afternoon, I remember sitting down with a mentor of mine, Bill Mitchell, who I've talked about many times on this show. And Bill said to me, Tom, you know, the real key is, yeah, you need to have a great attitude. But the question is, how do you create a great attitude? Like, how do you generate that? And it was the first time I thought about that, because I'd heard, fake it till you make it so many times. I thought, I think that's just a lot of BS. Now, I don't mean to be offensive when I say that, but I think you know what I'm saying. Like, if I just put a smile on my face, it doesn't make me a happy person, right? I mean, my goodness, right? We see lots of people, right? And you just know they're an energy-sucking vampire. And no buyer or seller or client's gonna wanna work with a person who's slightly psycho. So my mentor says to me, can you actually create a great attitude? And I said, I don't know. And he said, would you like me to show you? And he actually drew out this circle. He said, Tom, you know what happens? If you have the right self-talk, the things you say to yourself and about yourself, he said, yes, you can actually pump yourself up. And it was the first time that I started to look at things like affirmations, or later on in my life, I called them affirmations, where I got my body physically involved. He said, whether it's an affirmation or whether it is a mantra, something you say to yourself over and over and over again, like, a Mindset Monday, you've seen me do a bunch of these. If you keep saying these things over and over, it actually changes your emotional state. He said, the second thing is your focus. And I said, what does that mean, focus? He said, focus is determined by the questions that you ask yourself. And I said, give me an example. He said, so if you kind of pump yourself up and then you ask yourself 3 or 4 questions like, what do I love about my job? What do I love about serving clients? What am I grateful for? Who do I love? Who loves me? And you took the time to answer those questions. Now, I went through those quickly, but you got the gist. If every day you ask yourself, what do I love about my work? What do I love about the clients I get to work with? What do I love about my counterparts in the office? You start asking and answering those questions, it makes you feel good. Now, all this, I'm getting to a little method of my madness here, is simply this. When you feel good, you perform good. I started the show by saying, have you ever had a day where you just didn't feel like making your phone calls or doing the work? Hey, you and me both. Here's the difference. I know how to shift my attitude to get into the right action to produce the results, and that's exactly what I want to show you today. So the first thing he said was self-talk. Do you know the average human being has 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day? 40,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And like most of them are not real positive, especially if you're watching the news or you're headline reading, right? All you think about is the whole world's falling apart and we're all gonna die, right? If you read my book, Life by Design, I actually talked about most human beings are 6 moves from death and dying, because this drunk monkey conversation in your head is spinning out of control most of the time. What my mentor was saying, like I'm saying to you, is get control of it. Learn when your mind is going a little crazy to say stop and say, wait a minute, what do I love about my life? What do I love about this opportunity? What am I going to learn from this situation? Okay, I just got punched in the throat. What am I going to learn from this? How do I avoid that? How do I do it better? Right? You control your self-talk and your focus. You do those 2 things, you begin to shift your attitude. But he said the last one, was your body language. And I said, Bill, can you give me an example? And he said, well, watch this. Just slump your shoulders over. You know, if you see somebody like this, with their face frowning, their shoulders slumped over, that's not the sign of an ambitious, fired up, enthusiastic rock star salesperson. No, how does that person move? They put their shoulders back, they put a smile on their face. They're not faking it. It's all part of the formula. It's the right focus, it's the right self-talk, and it's the right physiology. I know this. If I just put my arms up like this and I put a smile on my face, it's really hard to get depressed. Right? And sometimes I'll picture like Steve Martin, one of my favorite comedians, like playing a banjo. And all of a sudden I'm arms up like this, smile on my face, Steve Martin playing a banjo because a deal just fell apart. And you know what? It changes your psychology, your attitude instantaneously. And you can do the same. So what do I want you to get from this? It is your self-talk, your focus, and the way you move your body impacts your attitude, which is simply your view of the world. So when you don't feel like making your phone calls, it's because you're running a play with your self-talk, your focus, and your physiology of, I don't want to make my phone calls today. If you run that play, you're going to get that attitude, which produces that action. And that action is positive or negative. It's just an action. But regardless, the action then produces a result. Here's the deal, my friends. How many days in a row can you go not taking responsibility for your view of the world? How many days in a row can you not take responsibility for pumping yourself up? We're entrepreneurs. If we don't do it, no one's going to do it, right? Like, you've got to take responsibility for what's going on up here, your view of the world, the questions you're asking yourself, the way you move your body, what you're saying to yourself, because that attitude, guess what? When you meet someone who wants to buy or sell real estate or wants to do a deal and they see that, they're like, hey, that gal's got it going on. That's a person I want to deal with. But what if you walk into Starbucks and you're like this, God, I didn't sleep well last night and it's really rough and I got this buyer coming into town. And that's what your physiology shows. You're not attractive to customers. You got to control this to control your attitude. Your attitude, guess what? It impacts the actions that you take. If I'm fired up, I'm gonna make my calls. If I'm feeling good about my life and the things that matter most to me, I'm gonna do what I have to do every single day to produce the results I want. That gets me the results. And guess what? When I produce positive results, how do you think it impacts my self-talk, my focus, and the way I move my body? It's a very positive or very negative spiral. What if this week you ran better plays with your self-talk, your focus, and your physiology, and watch how it impacts everyone around you? For my friends around the world, do the same exact thing. And just notice when you show up big and powerful, supportive, smile on your face, fired up, pumping yourself up, how does it shape the people around you? You know, they say like attracts like. So you come in with all that good energy, you're gonna have more people showing up with more energy around you. And last time I checked, that's a really good thing. So, short message from my friends in the US, but think about it like this. 2020 is right around the corner. If you don't take responsibility for your mindset, your attitude, your physiology, the way you move your body and what you focus on, 2020 may look a whole lot like 2019 or worse. You get to decide. Thank you so much for watching. Remember always, your strategy matters, and now more than ever, your attitude and your psychology is what rules the day.